Born in the harsh deserts of Tatooine, Asherad Hett was the son of the great Jedi Sharad Hett. For years, Asherad grew up learning the ways of both the Tusken Raiders and the ways of the Jedi. During his mid-teens, Hett and his father were discovered by the Jedi Knight Ki-Adi-Mundi, whom the Council had dispatched to investigate the tribes. It was at this time that the tribe would fall under an attack led by the bounty hunter Aurra Sing. The conflict that followed resulted in the death of Sharad. As his dying wish, he offered his lightsaber to his son and requested that Mundi take him back to the Jedi Temple to complete his training, to which Mundi agreed. Upon arriving at the temple, Asherad would meet a fellow native of Tatooine by the name of Anakin Skywalker, though it would be years before the two would cross paths again. Hett spent the best part of the following decade under the mentorship of the mysterious Dark Woman, also known as Anya Kuro. Eventually passing the trials into knighthood, Hett eventually became a Jedi General upon the dawn of the Clone Wars, and even took on a young and promising apprentice by the name of Bat Jewel. Asherad proved to be a strong and capable warrior throughout the conflict, but his Padawan did not fare so well, though perhaps death would have been a mercy. Upon the commencement of Order 66, Hett was one of the few who managed to escape the Great Jedi Purge. Returning to his home planet, Asherad reunited with his old clan and became their new chief. Though unlike his father, Asherad was fueled by a sinister bloodlust, directed at those whom had wronged both of his peoples. His crusade eventually brought him face to face with the Jedi Master, Obi-Wan Kenobi. After a brief exchange, the two would engage in a fierce battle across the desert sands. Upon his defeat, Hett lay disarmed and abandoned. By his last honor, Hett swore to Kenobi that he would leave Tatooine and bury his past, though the future that looked ahead for both Hett and the galaxy was one of darkness. Quinlan Vos was born into a wealthy family on the planet of Kifu. Discovered by the Jedi spy master Thong, Quinlan was given the privilege of being trained on his homeworld, as his parents were reluctant to let him leave. However, he would experience extreme trauma when his parents were murdered at the order of his aunt, and thus Thong would bring him back to the Jedi Temple, in hopes of completing his training and helping him leave his past behind. Quinlan's training would become a success, and he would eventually take on a student of his own, under the name of Aayla Secura. Amidst the eruption of the Clone Wars, Quinlan would work under his former mentor's wing as a double agent. Throughout this time, Vos infiltrated Count Dooku's inner circle, hoping he would be able to discover the identity of the one referred to as the Second Sith. This proved to be more difficult than first realized, as Quinlan's temptations with the dark side grew stronger, which led him to commit crimes against the Republic, and thus he came into conflict with many of his Jedi comrades. Towards the end of the war, he would finally find the strength to reject the darkness and reaffirm his allegiance with the Jedi Order, slaying the Dark Jedi Sora Bulk. When Order 66 was issued, Quinlan was among fellow Jedi Masters Yoda and Luminar Unduli on Kashyyyk. By the skin of his teeth, Vos managed to survive the betrayal brought forth by his clone troopers, and would fade away into hiding. Marrying the love of his life, Quinlan would father a child unto whom he would pass his family name, and swore to uphold the will of the light side, as those previously closest to him had done so before. So, 5 years ago today, I uploaded my first ever video onto YouTube, and in celebration, I decided to remaster the video that started it all and brought me many awesome friends. In regards to the characters themselves, I will be observing both of them within the Legends continuity exclusively, completely disregarding Quinlan's showings within the main canon. For Asherad Hett, I will be observing him during his battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi. For Quinlan, his analysis will take place during the events of the Great Jedi Purge.
Round 1.
By the time of his fight with Kenobi, Asherad was in his late 20s, and solidly within the prime of his physicality. Although both he and his mother were raised amongst Tuskens, Hett confirmed that the Sand People are not genetically compatible with humans, and thus he was human entirely. Having been raised to endure the harsh desolate landscape of Tatooine, Asherad was a very persevering Jedi, able to battle at peak performance under the harshest of conditions and carry out extensive battlefield engagements. His chosen lightsaber style implies a great deal of combative speed, and as expected, Hett frequently made use of this ability. Able to combat large groups of assailants at once, Asherad could implement well-timed acrobatics and force-enhanced speed without the need to slow his pace. In addition, he has frequently incorporated the use of unarmed physical strikes into his offensive, demonstrating a solid degree of strength behind the power of his punches and kicks, even able to send foes flying. Asherad Hett is not the most imposing Jedi on the battlefield, but he has repeatedly faced the enormous physical demands of war and endured the unforgiving Tatooine deserts, and has otherwise proven to be a very viable combatant on the basis of his physicality alone. Quinlan Vos was a peer of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and was believed to be of similar age, putting him at approximately 38 years old by the time of Revenge of the Sith. Quinlan belongs to a race known as the Kifar, a near-human species that are granted an ability in psychometric reading, but otherwise perform just as adequately as their human counterparts. Vos sported a bulky and muscular build, and frequently demonstrated the power of his physical might in combat, often making effective use of powerful unarmed attacks, in keeping with his chosen fighting form. Also in keeping with his chosen form, he has demonstrated excellent use of force-enhanced speed and agility, dispatching multiple opponents at once, and having been described as too fast to be seen, from the perspective of the clone troopers. But as impressive as his speed and strength were, Quinlan's endurance was on another level. Quinlan has consistently been on the receiving end of tormenting punishment, both physical and mental, having been battered, slashed, and even shot, and yet in almost every instance has managed to continue fighting, even securing himself victory several times over. Most impressively, he withstood a tank explosion at the start of Order 66, and went on to defeat and evade several clones, with only minor pauses in between each confrontation. Without a decisive killing blow, Quinlan Vos is going to keep coming back for more, time and time again. In the original video, I declared both combatants as equals in physicality, with the notion being that Hett would be able to cope with Quinlan's strength and endurance. However, what I failed to take into account was that being able to cope is only a substitute for being equal. Although both have performed fairly evenly in the realm of speed, and possibly in the realm of strength too, as both have shown similar degrees of success with their use of their might, Quinlan simply outclasses Asherad in the realm of resilience. Although I doubt either is capable of tiring the other out, Vos has fought through and endured more debilitating punishment over the course of his career, and thus this is what I believe to be the deciding factor in this category. Although Asherad will not be overwhelmed in this contest, Quinlan Vos is awarded the advantage in physicality, courtesy of his impressive physical power and immense perseverance.
Round 2.
Asherad Hett proved to be a talented warrior based on his skills with the lightsaber, having acquired a diverse array of skills and techniques from the teachings of his mentors. Hett primarily specialized in the use of Jarkai, a lightsaber style designed around the use of wielding two lightsabers in combat. As a Sith, his variation was believed to be based around the use of the Nyman variant. However, as a Jedi, his use of it appeared to more closely resemble the variant attributed to Ataru, the fourth classical form of lightsaber combat, which he likely picked up on courtesy of his training under Anya Kuro. Form 4 was a highly aggressive style that focused on overwhelming the opponent with incredible speed and agility, combining the use of force-assisted acrobatics as well as transforming one's entire body into a weapon through the use of unarmed physical strikes. He has also displayed skills in marksmanship over the course of the Clone Wars, although he didn't typically carry a blaster, and thus this isn't something that will be included in this matchup. Even at a young age, Hett proved to be a talented warrior, having participated in the Tusken ritual of killing a Krayt dragon whilst still a teenager, and later defeating the bounty hunter Aurra Sing, despite the fact that she had managed to gain the upper hand. Over the course of both his Jedi and Sith careers, Hett also demonstrated use of a reverse grip on his weapons, in tandem with his skills in blast deflection, suggesting a use of Form 5, Shien variation, a fighting style based around following up defensive maneuvers with immediate counter-offensives. Upon returning to his tribe on Tatooine, Ashrad was believed to have trained one of his followers to mastery in the use of Terraskazi, an unarmed fighting style designed for ordinary beings to be able to go toe-to-toe with Force sensitives. Combined with his use of Ataru and his expertise in the use of Tusken Gaddafi sticks, Ashrad showcased his skills in unarmed combat when he managed to disarm the young and talented Anakin Skywalker, despite being bereft of his lightsabers. But perhaps his most impressive display of skill came from his fight with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Although this battle took place 2 years after Revenge of the Sith, and Kenobi had supposedly not dueled throughout this time, he was still noted as an incredible master of lightsaber combat, even by the time of his final duel with Darth Vader, suggesting that his skills degraded rather slowly, making Ashrad's ability to contend with him all the more impressive. Even though the novelized version of their bout claims that Hett had an environmental advantage and was making use of underhanded tactics, this is still an impressive feat regardless, and should not be taken lightly. Although not counted among the greatest duelists of his time, Ashrad Hett proved his worth as a warrior and served as a fine addition to the Jedi Order. Quinlan Vos was a well-respected lightsaber duelist and a reputable warrior. Quinlan's primary styles were Form 4 Ataru, allowing him to make great use of his speed and agility in combat, and the Shien variant of Form 5, as demonstrated throughout his frequent use of the style's reverse grip and skills in blast deflection. Within the Jedi Path, Master Yoda has commented that only a true Master of Ataru can successfully engage multiple opponents in battle, suggesting that Quinlan has attained a high degree of skill in his chosen fighting form, having achieved victory over multiple opponents at once, even whilst hindered by injuries. His skills at Ataru also furthered his ability to proficiently make use of unarmed combat in battle, and thus he was perfectly capable of fighting without his weapon. Over the course of his career as an undercover agent, he occasionally made use of his skills as a marksman, having wielded a blaster in tandem with his lightsaber, though it should be noted that this wasn't something that he typically kept on hand. His skills in Ataru were also extended through his ability to proficiently apply the use of Jarkai dual-blade fencing against his foes. During his time as an operative under Dooku, the Count had supposedly trained Quinlan in the use of Form 2 Makachi, after Dooku criticized Vos's sloppy footwork and lack of refinement, although this didn't appear very frequently in the majority of his fights. Lastly, Sora Bulk had shown Quinlan how to use the Vapad variation of Form 7, a style that requires the user to call upon their inner darkness in battle and use it to channel their aggression. Vapad was also intended to allow the user to absorb and redirect the aggression of the opponent. However, Mace Windu warned Vos not to make use of this style once he learned that Quinlan had knowledge of it, as he skirted too close to the dark side already, and thus Vos never attained mastery over the style. Although Quinlan heeded Windu's warning, he did eventually conquer his inner darkness, and so he may still resort to its use, if required to achieve victory. Quinlan's greatest achievement came by way of his defeat of the legendary Swordmaster Sora Bulk, a Dark Jedi who was considered a peer of Mace Windu, and one of Dooku's top enforcers. While it is true that he received battle-meditated assistance from both Thom and Ayla, this is still an impressive skill regardless, and should not be taken lightly. Having defeated several dangerous warriors allied with both the Jedi and Sith alike, Quinlan Vos was a remarkable warrior based on his skill with the lightsaber.
Look how they massacred my boy.
This is an interesting comparison to make, as it is the one that my view has changed the most on over the years. Originally, I gave Quinlan the edge out of belief that his use of Vapad would grant him the advantage over Ashrad, believing that Hett's aggression would be his downfall. However, I have since come to realise that Quinlan's use of Vapad is nowhere near enough to effectively counter Hett's technique, especially since Ashrad only demonstrated extreme aggression as a younger man, when taunted about the loss of his father. The true deciding factor comes down to their fights with Kenobi and Bulk. Although Quinlan did defeat his adversary, the circumstances around the battle suggest that his victory would have been a lot harder to attain had it not been for the mental assistance of his allies. While there were circumstances surrounding Hett's fight with Kenobi, these were of less consequence, since they were more a result of Ashrad's skills and ability to effectively make use of the environment. which points to a greater degree of combative skill and tactical foresight. Although I don't believe that the advantage here is a landslided one, it is for his superior ability to contend with top tier duelists that earns Ashrad Hett the edge as a lightsaber duelist.
Round 3.
Ashrad Hett's peak potential in the Force was not reached until he became a Sith Lord. However, even as a Jedi, he was well respected for his connection to the Force, as Ki-Adi-Mundi had noted that he possessed great ability and potential, even before he had received formal training. Ashrad possessed a strong Force sense, able to sense the presence and the death of several of his Jedi comrades during Order 66. His most proficient talent came from his use of telekinesis, having frequently made use of reasonably strong Force pushes to scatter groups of assailants. In addition, he demonstrated skilled use of the saber throw technique, able to guide his thrown lightsabers to strike his targets from a distance. Hett has also been credited with the ability to use the Force Repulse, a powerful telekinetic blast that lashes out in a full 360-degree angle at all close-range targets. However, since Ashrad has never been observed using his telekinetics directly against another Force user, it is difficult to determine their true effectiveness. Ashrad Hett's Force abilities weren't fully flushed out until much later in his life, but he did possess great potential and was certainly on the path to greatness, based on the merits of his talent. Quinlan Vos possessed a strong connection to the Force, and he has demonstrated excellent variety and power in combat. His telekinetics were both varied and devastating. His power was capable of dealing extensive damage to his surroundings, able to blast apart large chunks of the environment, and hurl several objects at his opposition, including his thrown lightsaber, a skill he frequently made use of. His opponents also had the misfortune of being on the receiving end of his power, having choked and tossed around the likes of Aayla Secura and Jedi Master Kukruk. Over the course of his career as a double agent and spy, Vos frequently made use of Force Cloak, allowing him to hide his Force signature and presence from others, as he did so when sneaking past Kukruk, his intrusion only being discovered when the Whipped Jedi smelt the scent of charred ozone, caused by Vos's ignited lightsaber. Quinlan's use of telepathy was also well practiced, capable of mind-tricking weak-willed opponents to do his bidding, even capable of taming savage beasts, as can be seen during the happenings of the Jedi Purge, where he commanded a large serpent to attack several clones, a skill taught to him by Count Dooku. Vos also possessed talents in the rare ability of psychometric reading, allowing him to read the so-called memories of objects, although this has a little benefit in a fight and is more useful for investigation. Vos furthered his survivability with some skills in the art of Force healing, which aided in his ability to keep going after receiving his grueling injuries in Revenge of the Sith. Lastly, Quinlan had attained skills with Force Lightning, courtesy of his frequent flirtation with the dark side. He was criticised by Vulfe Karko as but a mere novice with the ability, since he rarely made use of it, but regardless, it adds to his variety and knowledge base. As my good friend Sci-Fi Soup once said, Quinlan Vos is essentially a multi-tool in the Force, as he brings a variety of abilities and power to combat a wide array of opponents. This verdict is much simpler to make, and practically mirrors my original opinion. While Hett is certainly a capable Force user, the effectiveness of his abilities against another Force user can only be rendered to speculation, whereas Quinlan's are more flushed out and easier to gauge. In addition, Quinlan has consistently shown a greater degree of potency and magnitude in the use of his power. Although his Force Lightning is unlikely to drastically affect the fight, it adds to his potential variety in battle. As the saying goes, better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Quinlan Vos is granted the advantage in Force abilities, courtesy of his destructive power and greater combative variety.
Round 4.
Ashrad Hett wielded two standard lightsabers bearing green crystals. The first weapon he received as his final gift from his father just before his death. It featured multiple ridges along the hilt, improving his grip over the weapon. The second he crafted himself. It featured some form of leather aligning the hilt, aiding his grip. It also featured multiple hanging trinkets from his kills during his life as a Tusken. Non-functional, but certainly cool to look at. Overall his weapons were decidedly standard, but effective nonetheless. Quinlan Vos made use of a single-bladed lightsaber bearing a green crystal. The hilt was slightly larger than that of a standard saber, possibly granting Vos a greater use of his strength in battle. It also featured ridges upon the hilt, granting him a greater degree of grip. Overall it was a standard but effective weapon. This is the simplest verdict to call. While Quinlan's lightsaber is certainly a fine weapon, Ashrad simply has double the options provided to him, resulted from possessing two weapons. In other words, you can do more when you have more. Ashrad Hett is granted the advantage in weaponry, thanks to his greater number of options in combat.
Final round.
Both Ashrad Hett and Quinlan Vos proved themselves as persevering Jedi survivors and hardy warriors. While they may not be among the absolute greats of their time, they nevertheless show that they could stand up to the best when push came to shove. And so with all of that said, let's find out who will emerge victorious. This battle will take place in the long open hallway inside the Jedi Temple. Initially, both combatants would meet each other head on and engage in straightforward saber-to-saber combat. The emerald blurs from their weapons would portray a spectacular hue of glowing energy to any that would witness their conflict. Both would make excellent use of their talents and import their expertise of unarmed combat into their offensive. But nothing decisive would land, as each Jedi would be able to withstand the other's physical might. Their ferocity would be matched, but Ashrad's more refined martial skill would eventually begin to drive Quinlan back, leaving him no choice but to fall into an uncomfortable retreat. Realizing that playing defense would only delay his defeat, Quinlan leaps back, creating distance between himself and his adversary. Within the span of a thought, Vos takes advantage of his newfound opportunity and unleashes the potency of his power, slamming Hett into one of the nearby pillars. Though Hett remains capable, the shot from the attack would lessen the gap between the duelist's skill. Ashrad may incorporate his own power into his sequence, but Quinlan would be more than capable of coping with everything thrown at him. Over the course of several grueling minutes of back and forth swordplay, hand-to-hand strikes, and force attacks, Quinlan's potency would eventually win out and wear down the Tusken Jedi Master enough for the Kithar to score a winning blow. Battered and beaten, Quinlan Vos, the Grey Jedi, the undercover agent, is declared the victor. Well, there we go. I had a blast revisiting my first ever matchup, and I would like to think that I've been able to improve the quality over the original, and I hope you guys are pleased with the newer version of the finished product. It's been a fantastic 5 years here on YouTube. I've made many videos and made several remarkable friends. Whether you have been subscribed from day one, or this is the first video of mine that you've watched, thank you so much for at least considering that my content might be worth watching. Here's to another great year here on YouTube. Right, I've babbled on enough for now, so until next time, remember to follow me on Twitter to keep up to date, be sure to force push that like button if you enjoyed, and of course, may the Force be with you, always.